Let's recap a little bit. The first Mountain Devil was about a group of guys who shot and killed a Bigfoot. The second was about finding a man who wrote about his daily encounters with a creature. And the third Mountain Devil, well, it's about Bigfoot and aliens. How did we make that jump? Well, let's find out. What we have here is a bunch of Bigfoot stories that all involve UFOs in some way, shape, or form. Now, just wait. Don't turn the video off just yet, because by the end, you might actually think there is something to all of this. This all happened in the 70s in Pennsylvania. A few of these stories I have actually heard before, like what happened to Jim Fox in Beaver County. He sees a flying saucer in the sky and gets attacked by a large, hairy hominid. Now, wait. What is this? Is this our Bigfoot? This looks nothing like your traditional Bigfoot, and it always has its mouth open. The face looks pretty scary, but I'm sorry, this is no Sasquatch. Anyway, Jim fires a couple shots at the Bigfoot, but that doesn't stop him, so he busts out the hammer, which does seem to do something, but not quite enough. Stan Gordon has been in each Mountain Devil movie, and this is no exception, especially given the subject. He specializes in the ultra-strange UFO Bigfoot encounters. He was in the thick of it in the 70s, so really, there's no one better. To clear some things up, generally in the Bigfoot community, there are two camps, the flesh and blood people, and the more woo interdimensional UFO community. Honestly, I don't care what you think, and I would say I fall somewhere in the middle, but it's still fun to hear all these stories of high strangeness. They also talked to John Venture, who doesn't believe in the flesh and blood theory. He thinks that these creatures should all be grouped together as paranormal. So really, a Bigfoot, alien, demon, a ghost, it all could be the same thing. He even has the idea that Bigfoot works for the aliens, doing the heavy lifting. This is all backed up by a story about 5 kids who were on vacation. They were driving their car on the beach and got it stuck in the sand. 3 of them stayed behind while the others went to go get help. The 3 who stayed behind saw a Bigfoot, and it walked all around their car. When the police came, Bigfoot just walked away onto a UFO, and it disappeared. The cops took photos and casts of the prints around the car and noted a gooey substance in the sand. But then, days later, the government came, took all the evidence, and left as quickly as they came. Time for another reenactment. Here we have a couple arguing about who's going to get the beer cooler when the guy finally caves in. But he doesn't make it that far, because a hairy creature comes out of the woods. He takes off back to his girlfriend to warn her, and they both go running. The guy doesn't make it too far, but the girl gets all the way to the creek. But these things are faster and stronger than her, and they kill her too. Ronald Murphy makes an interesting connection while reading the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the earliest stories ever. He says that in the book there was a hair-covered wild man lapping up water, then ran through the woods before ascending into a craft. Now the book makes it sound like it was ascending into heaven, but what if it was a UFO? In another reenactment, we see a guy wandering around the woods when he looks up and sees a UFO, which starts to follow him. He runs into some other people that are doing tests, and he can't convince them to just look up in the sky and see this giant UFO. The man makes it back to his Jeep and grabs a gun, while the researchers are obliterated. As the guy's driving, he fires off a couple shots. but of course it does nothing. So, for some dumb reason, he gets out and the aliens turn him into goo too. Tommy Copper believes that Bigfoot is UFO originated because he thinks that they are Nephilim. Now, this is pretty interesting. If you don't know what Nephilim are, you can turn to Genesis chapter 6 verse 4 in the Bible. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and after. It goes on to say that when the sons of God came onto the daughters of man, they bore children with them. These are the Nephilim. So, basically, an angel-human hybrid. I feel bad for the human woman who had to give birth to some giant. Anyway, Tommy also thinks that Bigfoot could have different powers, like some can mind speak, others can camouflage, and so on. He also brings up how in a lot of Bigfoot encounters, there are also orbs out in the forest. Perhaps these orbs are small alien life forms? But even Tommy has trouble getting this to sound believable.
The human woman and the angel man.
Finally, time for our last story, and it's a doozy. Eric Altman tells us about how there was 15 to 17 eyewitnesses for this one. A guy named Farmer Joe was driving to his parents to visit when he pulled into the driveway, and everyone was outside looking up at a large craft, red in color, right above the tree line. Eventually, it descended into a field, and Farmer Joe and a few other boys drove over to take a look. They noted that as they got out of the truck, they left their high beams on, and when they got out, they dimmed, like something was draining the power from it. As they walked, they heard what sounded like a lawnmower, and that's when they saw it. A craft, hovering just off the ground, with large, dark figures underneath it. The figures started walking along the fence line from post to post, and Joe fired a shot at them. First above their heads, just to scare them off, then directly at one of them. That's when it reached out its hand as if it caught the bullet in midair. When it did this, the UFO vanished. It didn't fly away, it just disappeared, and the creatures wandered away. So now they call the cops, who come out and investigate. And when they get there, the ground is still illuminated from the craft that disappeared just moments ago. They hear movement from the woods, and the cop pulls out a flashlight, lighting up the face of one of these creatures. Joe pulls out his gun and again fired at the beast, and this time it charged at them. The men escaped and were later interviewed in separate rooms, and their stories all matched up. Stan and his team go out to investigate, and Joe starts freaking out, waving his hands up in the air and running around like a crazy person. It turns out Joe was having apocalyptic visions. Some time passes, and they decide that it might be a good idea to do some hypnosis on Joe and see if he can remember any more details. They show up at his house, and he's confused. He said he thought that his team already came out and did this to him, or at least someone did. Men in suits showed up at the door and already put him under. Joe claims to still have psychic abilities, and to this day, this is the best UFO Bigfoot story there is. Phew! Did you get all that? There is a lot to unpack in that last story. But you have to remember that the first Mountain Devil was completely made up. Frank Peterson never shot a Bigfoot. It was just a story made up for the film. So why wouldn't they do that again here? I can't find any Farmer Joe UFO Bigfoot story on the web, but that wasn't his real name anyway, so who knows. I'm just saying, take that last story with a grain of salt. I will say that this isn't the first time I've heard about a UFO Bigfoot connection, so I won't completely dismiss it altogether. But that was Mountain Devil 3, the Bigfoot Invasion. And what did I think? Well, it had its moments. First off, all these encounters happened in the 70s, and none, I repeat none, of the reenactments even tried to fit the time period. But, just like in the last Mountain Devil, it was shot well with good animation and good drone shots. But I can't excuse them for the new Bigfoot suit. It looks really bad. When you see it full body, it's always falling apart. The mask looks like it would have made a pretty good alien or monster mask, but this is certainly no Bigfoot. And if it is, wouldn't its jaw get tired from always having its mouth open? Even so, if you have any interest in the connection between UFOs and Bigfoot, you'll like this movie. As for the trilogy, I would say that this falls somewhere in the middle. I like The Search for Jan Clement the best, then The Bigfoot Invasion, and finally, The Search for Frank Peterson. Are these movies worth watching? If you're into the Bigfoot topic at all, then sure. They're all stories that took place, or allegedly took place, in Pennsylvania. As for the East Coast goes, they have a lot of sightings over there. So, who knows? Maybe they're onto something here. I don't know. I hope to see more from what legend hunters can make. And maybe they'll make a Mountain Devil 4, where they hunt down the ghost of Bigfoot riding the Loch Ness Monster. I don't know. How else are they going to top aliens and Bigfoot? As for Mountain Devil 3, the Bigfoot Invasion, I give it 2.5 wide-mouthed alien Bigfoots out of 4.
Carl, run! I got the you, Charlie!